connected. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Jack Howard. I am an intern from the University of Chicago, working with Education USA in Mexico City.
Yeah, and my name is Manny. I am also one of the interns from the University of Chicago that is working here with Education USA at the Mexico City Center.
Okay, so let's get started for today. So we're generally going to be talking more generally about the SAT-1, the test graded, what people might call the normal SAT, the test graded between 400 and 1600 with an essay section, the one that most people take rather than the SAT-2. Yeah. Over the past few weeks, we've focused on each of the 4 sections of the SAT, reading, language, and both math sections. And we also talked about the essay and the SAT subject tests, both levels 1 and 2 for math. Now that we've covered all of that, we're going to be doing sort of a recap. We're going to go through a handful of questions from each section, and we're going to practice strategies for the entire test. Yeah, we'll also be sharing some resources so you all can continue your practice for the SAT. So I'll hand it off to Manny now for a moment.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. So as usual, what we're seeing right now is the order of the SAT. And first, of course, we have the reading section, then writing and language, then math, both sections, and then you have the essay, which is optional. We won't be focusing too heavily on the essay today, but we will definitely be talking about the main 4 sections and kind of recapping on those.
Okay. So we'll be starting today off with reading.
Yeah, so yeah, let me see if I can grab the file really quickly.
So while he's sharing the files with the file with the passage, why doesn't everyone take a look at these questions? I discussed last time that some people suggest looking at the questions and then reading the passage and then coming back to the questions. Some people recommend reading the passage closely first and then reading the questions. Why don't you try looking at the questions first today and see if that helps you at all. So just, take a quick look at these. I wouldn't necessarily recommend looking at the answers actually, because that might sort of put ideas in your head, but look at the questions so you can have maybe a vague idea of what kind of thing you're looking for in the reading.
All right, so hopefully everybody should be seeing the practice test that we'll be going over today with some of the questions that we'll be talking about today. So you'll want to go through, scroll down to the passage for questions 11 through 21. And feel free to let me know with a thumbs up if everybody was able to access that and get to that passage. sweet. So now that we are at that passage, let's take a few minutes, maybe 5 or so, to sort of read through this passage. Hopefully, you've all had a chance to look through some of those questions that are on the screen right now. But let's take about 5 minutes to read through the corresponding passage, and then we will jump right into the questions. So I'll put 5 minutes on the timer, and we can start reading.
I'll be back in one moment. Sorry.
All right, we have just about 2 minutes left, so right. So that's about time. So now that we've read through the passage, we can go ahead and jump into the questions. So uh, let's start off with number 11. So number 11 asks us about the main purpose of the passage. So it reads, the main purpose of the passage is to A, examine the role of technology in workers' lives during the last century, B, advocate for better technology to enhance workplace conditions, C, argue for changes in how technology is deployed in the workplace, and D, assess the impact of advancements in technology on overall job growth. So, based on what you were able to read from the passage, what would you all say that the main purpose of the passage is? And feel free to type your answers in the chat or raise your hand to uh, give us your answer and sort of explain how it is that you arrived at that answer.
Mm, I could say that the correct answer is the letter D.
Okay. Do you mind sharing with us how you got to D for your answer?
Well, there are some sentences that made me think that, such as uh, they believe that rapid technological change has been destroying jobs faster than it's creating them, contributing to the stagnation of median income and the growth of inequality in the United States.
Great. Yeah, that is
That's what I think.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing your answer. And yes, you are correct. Choice D is the correct answer. I think again, kind of like we have mentioned before in some of our sessions, pulling out those details in specific parts of the uh, passage can definitely help you figure out what the main purpose is. And that detail itself was a very important one. It pretty much, laid out, um, you know, uh, some of the specifics in what the passage meant to address. So yes, D is the correct answer. Um, moving on to question number 12. According to Brynjolfsson and McAfee, advancements in technology since approximately the year 2000 have resulted in A, low job growth in the United States, B, global workplace changes, C, more skilled laborers in the United States, or D, no global creation of new jobs. So same as last question, feel free to type your answers in the chat and, or raise your hand and share your answer and your reasoning for it.
One thing I'll say, this is sort of rare for SAT stuff, but I've actually read a good deal about this particular about Brynjolfsson and McAfee's work. It's interesting stuff. It's interesting stuff. Really influential, I believe.
Yeah, definitely.
I normally it's pretty stuff that at least I've never heard of, and I don't talk to many people who've heard of the stuff that they talk about on the SAT. It's normally fairly niche, but this is very influential research.
Okay, well, I don't see anybody's hand raised, but if anyone would like to jump in really quick and, explain their answer or give their answer, feel free to. Otherwise, we can explain the correct answer and things of that nature. Anyone? Okay. Well, for number 12, the wording of this question, it it's one of those questions that's asking you about specific details in the passage that you've read. And again, while you don't want to spend too much time reading it that you aren't able to answer the questions, you still do want to take enough time to pay attention to some of the more specific details that are in the passage. I did see somebody answer letter C. Um, and I think for question number 12, choice A is actually the best answer. Um, so this question here, like I mentioned before, it's one that asks you about a specific detail in the passage. And in the first paragraph, Brynjolfsson and McAfee, they have clearly stated that, these advances in technology since 2000 have led to low job growth in the United States. There's a specific section where it says that they've argued that impressive advances in computer technology are largely behind the sluggish employment growth of the last 10 to 15 years. And so based on that statement there, you'd probably want to go with A because of the similarity it has to what was asked in the question. And a lot of times, these questions won't necessarily, be the same word for word, but they'll ask the same sort of thing. So I think that's something else to make sure you keep in mind as well. For question number 13, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? So I did sort of give the quote, but if anybody is able to find where those lines are, please feel free to give that answer as well. Okay. Well, so in order to just save a little bit of time, so for number 13, choice A is the best answer again. And those lines were 1 through 6. And again, it was that statement about how the advances in technology were leading to some of that low job growth. Like I mentioned in the explanation, that was in the first paragraph. So naturally, that would probably be something either A or B. And you could use process of elimination to, get rid of those if you weren't sure. But yeah, the correct answer for 13 is A. Moving on to number 14. The primary purpose of the lines 26 through 28 is to A, describe a process, B, highlight a dilemma, C, clarify a claim, or D, explain a term. So feel free to raise your hand to share your answer, or type your answer in the chat to let us know what you think the correct answer is. And as the question asks, you will be able to find the answer in lines 26 through 28. So seeing B, and also just a quick heads up, everyone, please feel free to share your answers to everyone in the chat so that others can see what you're thinking in terms of the answer as well. But yeah, so far I've gotten B for an answer. Okay, so I don't think anybody else has. Oh, okay. Um, I also see somebody answering D. Okay, sounds good. Does anybody else have an answer? Feel free to type it in the chat as well, or um, raise your hand and explain the details that you found. No one else? Okay. So the correct answer for this question was actually choice D. Um, and so the oh, I also got somebody guessing A. Yeah. So but the reason why choice D was the best answer for this question, the explanation sort of tells us that the second sentence of that paragraph where we find those lines, um, this context is meant to define productivity. It specifically says the primary purpose of the a positive is to explain or define uh, what productivity is. Um, all of the other choices, each of those sentences are clearly provided to help explain it or give more context to it, but not necessarily to um, describe the process, highlight a problem with it, or necessarily, explain a claim. Choice D is the most important one that helps to explain what it is that lines 26 through 28 are doing. And those lines are explaining the term productivity. So yeah, for number 14, choice D would be correct. For number 15, as used in line 35, clear most nearly means A, pure, B, keen, C, untroubled, or D, unmistakable. And again, this type of question you might see pretty commonly on the SAT. And there are a lot of other, um, tests where you might see questions of this sort, where they just want to see um, how you can, figure out what the meaning of a word is based on the context of the passage and even some of the words around it. So yeah, please feel free to drop your answers in the chat or raise your hand and give us some background on how you got to your answer. So I'm seeing A. Was it? Oh no, sorry. Yeah, so I'm seeing A and I'm seeing D. Okay, yeah, so I'm seeing D and A so far. Does anybody else have any other answers or any other guesses as to what this question might, uh, what the choice for this question should be? Okay, Well, the correct answer for number 15 is choice D. Um, and so uh, let me see here really quick. Valeria, I see that you uh, answered correctly with D. Do you mind sort of explaining how you got to that answer? Valeria, are you there? Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah. That's all right. But yes, you answered correctly. And the explanation sort of gives us just a little bit of a uh, um, sort of a viewpoint to seeing how this answer is the best one. And it explains that, the third paragraph states that the pattern is clear. As businesses generated more value from their workers, the country as a whole became richer. And so it explains that in this context, the word clear is meant to be used to mean obvious or unmistakable. And so, again, this is one of those questions where it's all about, understanding the context of a word in a sentence or even just within that passage in general. So definitely make sure to, think about what words might mean when they're being used in sentences. And for question number 16, which of the following best characterizes Katz's attitude towards today's digital technologies? And this is in lines 81 through 82. Um, and the choices for this question are A, he is alarmed about countries' increasing reliance on them. B, he is unconcerned about their effect on the economy. C, he is uncertain how they might affect job growth. Or D, he is optimistic that they will spur job creation to a degree not seen since the mid 19th century. So, yeah, feel free to, again, put your answers in the chat and or, raise your hand to explain the details that you found to help you get to your answer. And please, I encourage you to, if you're typing in the chat, please feel free to share your answers with everyone in the chat so that everyone can see each other's reasoning or each other's way of thinking, so to speak, about answering this question. Okay, haven't seen any answers so far. Again, just for us to save some time so we can continue on with more of the sections. Um, the correct answer for question number 16 is C. And the explanation that we're given is that, um, Katz doesn't necessarily agree with the researchers from MIT, Brynjolfsson and McAfee. He doesn't agree that new technology is leading to sluggish job growth. But he does say that he's not sure that it will remain true. And one of the uh, lines that we find is that if technology disrupts enough, who knows what will happen? And that who knows what will happen most, directly relates to choice C that talks about him, being unsure about how they might affect job growth. So yes, the correct answer for uh, question 16 is C. So we'll move on to the next set of questions for this passage. Um, Jack,
Mm-hmm.
do you mind moving to the next slide?
Oh, of course. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Sorry. I was I was looking at the browser version rather than the presentation version.
Gotcha.
Monday brain, I guess.
Yeah. So for number 17, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Um, and so, um, yeah, I do. I did sort of give the specific wording away for this one already, and that would be lines 91 through 92, where Katz states, if technology disrupts enough, who knows what will happen? And again, kind of just, relating back to question number 16, making sure that you find specific quotes or specific, phrases that tie into what the question is asking are surefire ways to find the correct answers to these questions. But yeah, the correct answer for 17 would be D. Moving on to number 18, as used in line 83, range most nearly means A, region, B, scope, C, distance, or D, position. Again, this is one of those other questions where we talk about what a word most nearly means. I'll definitely use the sentence that it's used in to help you figure this out. Um, okay, I'm seeing B. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of B's. Yeah.
Wait, sorry. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of people answer B for this one. Um, if anybody else wants to answer in the chat, please feel free. Okay, so the correct answer for question number 18 is in fact B. Yes. Um, would anybody who answered B like to explain the details that they found?
I would like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Mauricio.
In my case, for me, is the most logical answer because we're not talking about regions, area, or distance, or something physical. We're talking about the scope of jobs. So that's what I think.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Mauricio. Yeah, I do think while sometimes using the specific sentence can help. Also thinking about the word in the context of the whole passage is very helpful as well. And like you were mentioning, in the passage we are talking more about, the growth and the, even shrinkage of jobs. And scope most nearly ties into, how far the diversity or growth of jobs is reaching. And like you mentioned, we aren't talking about, physical distance or a physical place or, region. We're talking about, how far jobs are growing or shrinking. So yes, B is the correct answer. Great job to everybody who answered that. For number 19, according to figure 1, which of the following years showed the widest gap between percentages of productivity and employment? Um, so with this one here, you'll all want to go back to the uh, end of the passage and look at figure 1. And it's basically asking us where the largest gap between, productivity and employment is. So the year where that um, those two items were separated the most. So please definitely look over that and feel free to drop your answer in the chat. Okay, so I'm seeing D. Cool. Cool. Okay. Would anyone else like to answer in the chat? So please feel free to just give your best guess and um, like Jack and I have mentioned before, all of this is to just help us get better answering these questions, and it's perfectly okay to be wrong about one of these. The goal is just to learn from these. So yeah, I do think we've gotten some good answers, and the correct answer for um, question 19 is, in fact, choice D. And I don't think anybody really needs to explain this. Again, the question gave us the parameters for, or at least what to look for when we were trying to figure out the best answer. And at 2013, we did see that productivity and employment were, pretty separated. So definitely D is the correct choice. All right. And also, just uh, a heads up. Some certain reading passages may include figures to kind of, you know, give a more complete picture of what's being discussed. And other times, like we're seeing now, the figures will be, questions will be the subject of certain questions. So definitely, don't spend too much time, staring at the figures, but make sure that you're aware of them and that you take in the most important parts of them, for sure. And always, use the questions to kind of help you figure out what it is that, uh, you're supposed to be looking for in the figures. But that leads us to question number 20. Which statement is supported by figure 2? A, the country with the greatest growth in output per manufacturing worker from 1960 to 1990 was Germany. B, Japan experienced its smallest increase in output per manufacturing worker from 2000 to 2011. C, each of the three countries experienced an increase in its output per manufacturing worker from 1960 to 2011. Or D, of the three countries, the United States had the greatest output per manufacturing worker for each of the years shown. So, again, you want to take a look at figure 2 at the end of the passage and look through it to see which of these statements are backed up by what we see in the figure. And as always, feel free to drop your answer in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing C. Okay, I'm also seeing a D. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so the correct answer for question 20 is C, in fact. Um, and would anybody who answered C like to briefly, give us sort of the details or, how they ended up uh, getting to C for their answer?
Mm, because in the figure 2, we can see that the output of employment is increasing over the time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing, Mauricio. Yeah. Again, the explanation goes right along with that. That figure 2 clearly shows that all of the three countries between that time period um, increased their worker output. Um, uh, the other choices are, incorrect. For a variety of reasons. For choice A, figure 2 shows that Japan had greater growth between 1960 and 1990 than Germany. And choice B showed, the fact that figure 2 experienced its greatest increase in output from 2000 to 2011, not its smallest. And with choice D, that was also incorrect because figure 2 showed the US having the greatest output of all of the countries only in 2011, but not in each of those years. So again, um, some of these questions are just about paying attention to the figures and, spending, a bit of time to more closely analyze them. And then lastly, for question number 21, which additional information, if presented in figure 2, would be most useful in evaluating the statement in lines 57 through 60? Um, A, the median income of employees as it compares across all three countries in a single year. B, the number of people employed in factories from 1960 to 2011. C, the types of organizations at which output of employed persons was measured. Or D, the kinds of manufacturing tasks most frequently taken over by machines. So definitely, this is one of those questions again where you're going to be looking back at those figures, but also, pay attention to the statement in lines 57 through 60. That statement is how you're going to figure out which of these would make sense, um, or at least would make best sense in terms of, um, what the question is asking. So again, as usual, please feel free to drop your answer in the chat. And yeah. Okay, I'm not seeing any answers, and that's totally fine. I think this is one of those questions that, can be a little bit complex in the sense that there's a lot of details that it's asking you to look for. But lines 57 through 60, says that, productivity is at record levels, innovation has never been faster, and yet at the same time, we have a falling median income and we have fewer jobs. Um, And so the question again wants to ask which of the pieces of information could help, test that statement. And the best, you know, piece of information that could help us do that would be choice B, which is the number of people employed in factories from 1960 to 2011. And, you know, figure two, in order to evaluate that statement, you know, it would need to have accurate information about the number of jobs that people had in factories from that period of time over 1960 to 2011. You know, and again, without knowing those numbers, it's not possible for us to determine how correct Brynjolfsson's statement is. And so, yeah, those were the questions and answers for our reading passage for today. And next we'll be moving towards writing and language.
Yeah. So I think we'll do the first question or two for writing and language, then take a break, and then come back and work on writing and language a little more. But yeah, let's get started. So take a look at question 1. It addresses the underlined passage in the first sentence of this passage, and the underlined phrase in this passage entitled NASA, a space program with down-to-earth benefits. Yeah. Take a look and put an answer in the chat, or raise your hand to explain, you know, why you got the answer you did. Yeah. Okay, so I'm seeing D a good deal. Could anyone explain why they chose D? Okay, I mean, Mauricio?
Yes. I think it is not necessary because we can see the word frequently.
Yeah, correct. You want to avoid redundancy, and that is redundant. That is, you know, it would be redundant to say frequently many times. So now move on to question 2, also dealing with an underlined phrase. Okay, so it seems like people are saying A. I don't see any real reason to solicit explanations for this one, since you know, it's just a rule that you have to know. These are called homophones. Homophones are words that sound the same but mean different things. Now, affect and effect, both often said as effect, or effect, like, you know, you can't always tell the difference when people pronounce it. But these two words are difficult because they mean very similar things. Affect is a verb and effect is a noun. It's a very different, I mean, it's a very difficult thing to remember. I don't know, just I think it's good to you know, try and get maybe a mnemonic device in your head. So maybe think affect starts with A and it is an action. If you affecting something is an action, it's a verb. While effect is a noun, just think A, affect, action. That's one way to do it, but try and get that into your head. Yeah, it's obviously, and it's obviously on society, not to society. You don't really affect to something, or there's not really enough. Hold on, let me see. That's very positive. So you can say, you can say affect to something, but in this case, you do not, you want to say affect on. I think you want to use affect to when it's like more definable and specific. Like, you know, you might say like, oh yeah, you might say like, I've noticed the adverse effects to my mental health. I've noticed adverse effects to my mental health during the pandemic. But I think that means like it's like more specific and itemized. Well, if something has an effect on something, it's kind of more generalized. Manny, do you think that's right? It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, those two, affect and effect, they definitely do have different meanings, especially in those different contexts that you were talking about. Like you were just saying, having an effect on mental health, somebody may not necessarily have the specific effect, but you know that it's, you know, impacted them in some way. Whereas, effect is, kind of talking about maybe necessarily, how something is impacting somebody. So yeah, definitely the difference in context can, help you figure out which one makes more sense.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure though. Effect two is ever right now that I think about it. It's hard to find. It's hard to find. It doesn't. I cannot find a direct explanation. I think people would generally err toward effect on though, rather than effect two. Like I think you can refer to the effects to something, but generally you want to talk about effect on something. I think now would be a good time to take a break. Maybe reconvene at 5:10.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, I'll see everyone back here in about 8 minutes. Okay, well, I think I'll get started now. So the next question deals with part of the passage that starts on this slide and goes on to the next. It's just how the page division works on the test. So I'll just read the sentence aloud. Many people think of NASA's programs as trivial. In truth, the agency has a widespread positive effect on society by serving as a catalyst for innovation and scientific understanding, to create jobs and showing humanity its place within the universe. Can anyone tell me what the answer to number 3 is? Okay, so a lot of people are saying B. Can anyone explain why they got that? Okay, well, I'll explain then. I believe this is referred to generally as parallelism, where you have to have, if you're going to have a list of things, they all need to be grammatically the same. They all need to be grammatically similar. So if I were to say, oh yeah, I like to go to the store, the bank, and to the water fountain, that would sound kind of awkward. Because, I had to the store, and then, it would have sounded better if I'd say, like I like to go to the store, the bank, or the fountain, or to the store, to the bank, and to the fountain. You want to have all parts of that list grammatically similar. In this case, you have the list starting out with catalyst for innovation. You have the list starting out with serving as a catalyst for innovation and scientific understanding. You have it starting out with that, and you have it ending with showing humanity its place within the universe. So you can see that the grammatical form that the other items on the list take. When I say items on the list, of course, I mean these phrases. They aren't actually physical items. these items on the list take is just a is an ing gerund form. So you want be creating jobs. You know, it's that you want the item in the list to grammatically match the other two items in the list. And since you can't change those other two, you can't change showing humanity its place within the universe or serving as a catalyst. So you have to change the one in the middle to an ing form. Okay, let's get started on number 4. Okay, so I'm getting actually mixed answers on 4. Okay, so we're getting C and A on 4. Okay, so I'll read it over. But by initiating and collaborating on projects such as the Apollo moon missions, the Space Shuttle program, and the Hubble Space Telescope, the Space Shuttle programs, the Hubble Space Telescope, and unmanned planetary exploration, NASA has continually challenged its scientists and engineers. So it seems to be a question about grammar largely. If you have, this is another question about items in a list. So if you have more than 2 items and you're using a comma to separate them, you want it to be item 1, comma, item 2, comma, and item 3. So you want, if you have, for the last one with the and, you want it to be comma and then no punctuation between the and the item on the list. So the answer would be A, because it already has, by initiating the collaborations on the yada yada, Apollo missions, comma, the Space Shuttle program, comma, the Hubble Space Telescope, comma, and unmanned planetary expeditions. There you have just a very simple list of items that you want to have separated by commas, and you with the and, you want the comma to go before the and you don't need any punctuation separating the and from the thing that is the last item on the list. Okay, hide now. The answer is A, correct. Thank you. Yes, Jorge, the answer to 4 is A. Everyone give me your thoughts on 5 now. Okay, so I'll give people another second. I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts on why they got the answer they did. Raise your hand or just speak up. Okay, so I'm getting A and C. Could anyone just speak up and tell me how they got their answer?
In my case, I think that letter B, C, and D have nothing to do with the context, I think. So that's what I chose, letter A.
So you chose A, no change, because you don't think B, C, and D have to do with the context. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm gonna read it over now. So the question is, first of all, Which choice most effectively sets up the list of examples that follows in the next sentence? So it's more about the next sentence than this one. All along, these NASA projects have greatly increased international cooperation. A short list of inventions elaborated by NASA includes communication satellites, invisible braces, and cordless tools. To me, this seems a bit out of context. Like A seems a bit out of context, the way it already is, because the next sentence doesn't talk about international cooperation. It talks about something else. It talks about generally inventions. So just ask yourself, does it talk about international cooperation? Does it talk about national publicity? Does it talk about new technology, or does it talk about money? I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people are sort of switching on this one to C. C, I believe, is correct. The one thing that I think is interesting about this one is that all of the options would be grammatically correct. You have to look at the context, and this is a strange one because it's more a question about the next sentence than the one that the passage, that the phrase is actually in. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, that you may be dealing with, you may not be dealing with grammar, and you may not be dealing with the sentence you think you are. Okay. Sticking with this passage, but with new questions, let's take a look at 6. I'll give you all a second to take a look at it. Okay, so it seems like I'm getting mostly C here. Would anyone like to explain how they got that or something different? Just speak up or raise your hand.
Yeah. Well,
Great.
elaborate means to manufacture. So probably they don't manufacture it; they just developed it.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounded the best for me.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I look at it generally as, all of these words would to some degree work there, I think. Like, none of them would be completely nonsensical, but you want the word that explains the relationship between the two things and the action that was done most accurately with the least inaccuracy. I know that sounds repetitive, but I mean it in that it encompasses as much of the project as possible, as much of the action as possible, without adding too much extra. So I would say that it is, in fact, C. Elaborated is kind of out there. Elaboration generally refers to taking something and going beyond it. While it doesn't really talk yet about NASA going beyond these inventions, talking about the inventions that resulted from NASA. So I would cross off A myself. B, evolved. Inventions evolved by NASA. That could sort of work, but it's not really talking about the process by which the inventions were invented. If it's evolved, it implies that I don't know, that's the word evolved is about the process, implying that it went through stages of evolution, that the inventions, went through multiple stages of evolution and all that. And they probably did go through multiple stages of evolution, but that's not what we're talking about. we don't know if NASA evolved them or if they just kind of, sprung, or if NASA just found them, or, we don't, evolved brings in information that we don't really know. So I would certainly get B out of the way for 6. So we've agreed on C. D is progressed. Progressed, I think, goes the other way. Rather than adding on extra information, it doesn't give all the information. Progressed implies that these inventions were already sort of in existence, and NASA merely, improved on them. Maybe that is true, but, I don't think that's what they're implying. I think they're implying that NASA sort of started them and progressed them. So it doesn't have quite enough information, and it adds in new information. It doesn't have enough information in that it only gives part of what NASA does, and it gives too much information, and it gives new information that we don't have, namely that these inventions had already been begun somewhere else. So now take a look at 7. A few people have already put in their answer, but I'd like anyone else to take a look at 7. Okay. So what answers am I getting for that? So I'm getting, so I got B, I got C, and I got B. Anyone else want to give it a crack before I go over it? Okay, so the answer is B. And this is because this is a verb number problem. So all these inventions, that is a plural subject. So you need a verb in the plural. Spawns is in the singular. So if you were to have a singular subject like this invention spawns new industries, that would be one thing, but it says these inventions. Also, the spawns is in the present tense, and it's starting to look, like they would want past tense. Generally because, the idea of knowing that it is currently spawning new industries doesn't really sound right, but that's not quite as concrete. The concrete reason that it is currently wrong, the concrete reason that no change is wrong, is because of the verb number. C also has a verb number problem. C also has a verb number problem because has is a singular verb. This invention has spawned new innovations, but you can't say these inventions has. It would be have, the plural of has. And D, even though it has the number correctly, it would not be a full sentence. If you were to say all these inventions spawning new industries, and with those industries jobs, that could be part of a sentence, but the period is after jobs, and therefore it can't be that, because that alone would not be a sentence. There would be no verb. Spawning is an adjective, or it functions as an adjective. It's an adjectival. So you can't have D, because even though the number is correct, this would not be a sentence if you chose if you chose D, because there would be no verb. And every sentence, as I'm sure you all know, needs to have a subject and a verb. The subject sometimes can be implied, but it needs a verb. And it needs a verb and a subject, which can sometimes be implied. Interesting fact, you probably won't see it in these passages, but the word remember can be a full sentence. Any any verb can actually be a full sentence in conversation, because you can be a implied subject. So if I tell my dog like sit, the implied subject is you dog sit, and it's a subject and a verb. So that is a sentence. You probably already knew that, but I remember when I was younger finding that out. I thought it was kind of cool that any single verb could be a sentence. Okay, so let's get started on questions 8 and 9. Sorry, 8 and 9. Yes, this is a good one to follow up with, because it uses a similar grammatical rule as the last question. The answer I am getting is D. Can anyone explain why they chose D? Could anyone explain why they got D? Just speak up. Feel free to unmute yourself at your own.
Yeah, because it's past tense. It was in 2005.
Oh, well, that's an interesting way to do it. That is correct, but I think it's the more difficult way of finding the answer. For all options except D, sentence 2 would not be a full sentence. You need so more than 60% of the contributions coming from commercial goods and services created by companies using space-related technology. That's not a sentence. There's no actual main verb there. There is a verb, created, but it's but it's not but that doesn't actually count as a predicate within the sentence. Because created is in this case used as just an adjective. It's describing the services. There's no you need came, because it is the only option that actually would make this a sentence with a subject and a verb. If you used which came, by the way, when I say subject and a verb, it needs more than that too. The verb cannot be, if I say when I went to the store, that is not a sentence, even though it has a subject and a verb. It's a subordinate clause. You need a verb and you need an independent clause. There's no independent clause in this sentence, and came is the only way you get a verb in an independent clause. So, so the method that you talked about works. I think, the more grammatical method also works. you can't always depend on having context clues, while you can always depend on the grammar being right. So, I would try and depend on the grammar, and if not, if you can't get that to work for you, use the context clues. But a right answer is a right answer. Very good job. Okay, onward to question 9. These are, in my opinion, some of the most annoying and difficult questions. Some of the most annoying and difficult questions on these tests. So, I say that just out of personal opinion. And saying, I sympathize, I empathize if you find this a little bit odious. If not, good for you. Okay, so I'm getting A and C for 9. I think I know it, Manny, but do you have the correct answer here? I find these difficult.
For number 9, correct?
Yeah, don't tell everyone yet, but you have it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see if I can work this out. These are these were where I hemorrhaged points myself, so. So I think it's A as well. Some people have said A. Is it A?
Yes, the answer is A for question 9.
Yeah. So the way I solved this out was that hold on. Of the contribution, I thought it was this of the contribution, that it says contributed here, and here it refers to the contribution. So obviously it's referring to this contribution up here. Basically, it wouldn't say the contribution if it hadn't already referred to some contribution. And since if you moved sentence 1, sentence 2 would be the first sentence. Basically, you need to have sentence 1 before sentence 2 so you can talk about the contribution before sentence 2, which needs to be done. I know that sounds a bit circuitous. My point, I guess, is that sentence 2 implies that a contribution has already been brought up. So you need to have some sentence before sentence 2 referring to a contribution. And sentence 1 does that. Therefore, sentence 1, needs to be before sentence 2, and its current place is the only place where that happens. Therefore, keep it where it is. Okay. Okay, sorry. 2 more questions on this section. Then on to a little math. Take a look at number 10. This is another type of question that I think is sort of difficult personally. I'm glad that we're able to practice these because I mean, you can practice all of this on your own, but I think that grammar rules are a little bit easier to learn by rote, while things like sentence ordering and sentence addition are a little bit more difficult to do without somebody to ask questions to. And I'll stress this again. Please, 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 100 times please, ask any questions that you have There's not much advantage to, trying to solve these questions if you don't fully understand the ones that you get wrong. That is, if you, don't understand the ones you get wrong, then the practicing is almost worthless. If you just get a question wrong and then say like, oh, well, I got it wrong and move on, or, you get it wrong and you are sort of nervous about asking about it, you're not going to improve. You're just going to keep getting the same questions wrong. So please ask any questions you have either in the chat box or by raising your hand, or feel free to direct message me or Manny if you'd rather. Some people have done that in the past. Yeah. So I'm seeing D from some people. I'll give everyone else a second to take a look. Probably goes without saying, but sadly, if you get the yes or no correct but get the reason wrong, you don't get any points. So it matters, to get the reason, the reason part correct. So 10, I got 1 C and some D's. I'll give people another second or two. Okay. Yeah. The correct answer is D. Manny, that is right? If not, I will do a backflip where I said for 10.
Yeah, I think it is D. Yeah.
Okay. If not, I would have to restart my English degree. Because apparently I didn't know what I was talking about the whole time. So let's read this through a tiny bit. Tyson's expansive vision for the agency hints at another mission of NASA's, illuminated in this observation by Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell. You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it. And then I'll add the sentence in. In addition, NASA has facilities in Washington, D.C., Florida, Texas, California, and other states. I guess I would ask, does that follow? I mean, it does add something. It does say in addition, but does the addition actually mean anything? Does it actually improve the point? A paragraph should obviously be more than the sum of its sentences. It should portray an idea or a set of ideas. This idea that, it has these facilities does nothing to progress the point of it creating a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it. So I would highlight that as why. Yeah, that basically no and no because it just doesn't belong. Sometimes it will be because it's repetitive, I think, that the reasons can be different things. I think often the reason is either if it's a no, and it's not always a no, of course. Sorry, that's my dog. I think there's a storm coming. But the reasons when they're no, I think, are often because of redundancy or because of irrelevance. This is because of irrelevance. That's in no way a general rule. That's, common at the very least. And could people take a look at 11, please? Um, 10 was D. 10 was D, just so you know. Okay, so for 11, I've gotten A and D. I'll give people another second on 11. Another A. Okay. The correct answer is A. And so nobody chose B or C, so I don't think we need to focus too much on those. However is a counterfactual, as in it should, if you're using however to start a sentence, the sentence you're starting should oppose the previous sentence in some way. So, and is the statement that we need some perspective contradictory to the statement that we should continue to support NASA? I would argue it is not, because if you look back up here, this whole quote certainly could be boiled down to space travel helps deliver some perspective. And if NASA and space travel helps deliver perspective, and they state that we need perspective, it is logical and not contradictory to say that we should continue to fund NASA. So therefore is a better choice than however, because however implies that the statement will oppose the previous statement, while therefore implies that it follows logically. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions? Or any, okay, Jorge? Jorge, were you saying yes for you understand or you have questions? Okay, good to know. If anybody has any questions, please speak now. If not, I will hand it back to Manny to do some quick math review. We certainly focused a bit more on the reading and writing sections today, which I think is fine because we did, the math SAT 2 as well. Yeah, also I think math is a little bit easier to review for on your own. Khan Academy for math is very good. Well, I think, being able to do the humanities sections in an interactive environment where you can ask questions and hear multiple explanations is, I don't know, maybe I sound like I'm justifying the fact that we spent more time on humanities today, but I actually think that if one had to get less time today, I think it's better that it's math. Without further ado, I will hand it off to Manny.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So now we're gonna kind of switch gears and kind of practice a little bit of math. And I think this section is the one with no calculator. So I'm thinking what we'll do is that we'll maybe try and answer, for time's sake, we'll try and answer maybe 5 or 6 questions for each of those sections. And then we'll kind of jump into, again, just a review of some of the strategies we've talked about throughout our SAT prep series, and also just some resources that can help you when it comes to preparing. But other than that, let's definitely jump into these questions here. So for question 2, we have the expression 3 times x plus 5 minus 6. So which of the following choices is equivalent to that? Would it be A, 3x minus 3, B, 3x minus 1, C, 3x plus 9, or D, 15x minus 6? So please feel free to type your answers in the chat or raise your hand and kind of walk us through your answer. Okay, I'm seeing some C's. I also saw a B for 3. So very interesting so far. But yeah, please feel free to, if you haven't already, throw your answer in the chat. All right, so for question number 2, the correct answer, hold on just a second here. Yeah, so for question number 2, the correct answer would be C. Would anyone like to, explain how they arrived at their answer, or anything of that nature? Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to share as well.
In this case, we have to multiply 3 by x, and after that we have to multiply 3 by 5, and then we have to subtract 6, and the result is 3x plus 9.
Right, definitely. Yes, so again, just, kind of simple, order of operations, and also just kind of simplifying the expression. But yeah, great job on that for everyone who answered C. For question number 3, they give us these two, the system of equations here, and which ordered pair satisfies that system of equations up above? Would that be A, 3, 0, B, 0, 3, C, 6, negative 3, or D, 36, negative 6? And apologies for that first option. That first option should read negative 3, 0 instead of 3, 0. So yeah, please feel free to share your answer in the chat. I do see someone's already shared their guess for B in the chat. But please, if anybody else has a guess, please feel free to share that in the chat as well. Okay. So I'm not seeing any answers for that, but except for one. But the correct answer for question 3 is uh, sorry. The correct answer is choice B. And yeah, Mauricio, you guessed that one correctly. Um, do you mind explaining that?
Yes, I could do it with some of the methods that we can use for the system of equations, but I only try to do it a little bit faster. So I choose an option, and I try to see if the result was correct or not, and I know it's something that sometimes may work and sometimes not, but in this case, I think I got the answer. I got the correct answer a little bit faster.
Sweet. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So also, there are different ways that you can, approach systems of equations, like you just mentioned. And one of those ways is again, just kind of finding ways to, get each of those, each of the equations to rearranging it so that you can add or subtract certain variables and this, and the like. And then eventually solve for each of them. But yeah, thank you for sharing, Mauricio. So now we'll move on to the next set of questions. Really quick. Yeah, so for number 6, a company that makes wildlife videos purchases camera equipment for $32,400. That's a lot of money. The equipment depreciates in value at a constant rate for 12 years, after which it is considered to have no monetary value. How much is the camera equipment worth 4 years after it is purchased? So this one here, again, you'll need to figure out the relation between the starting value of the camera equipment and how much it's worth 4 years after it's purchased. And so yeah, would that be A, B, C, or D? And feel free to share your answer in the chat or, raise your hand and share with us your reasoning for your answer. Okay, so I'm seeing A. Are there any other guesses anyone else has? Yeah, I'm definitely seeing people agree with A. Um, uh, would anybody who guessed A like to, kind of share their thought process, or at least how they got that answer? Jorge, I see you answered A as well. Would you like to share?
Yes. So it says that after 12 years, um, the value of the camera equipment is 0. Well, that's what I suppose because it has no monetary value. So 4 years after its purchase, it means that it's 1/3 of 12 years. So I said, why don't I multiply 32,400 by 1/3. And that's, well, in my head I did it and A was the closest.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great way of solving this one. And again, this is the no calculator section, and you're going to have to rely on being able to make some mental calculations when you're answering these questions. And that was a very quick and very good way to solve it. Making sure you can find the relation between the numbers in the problem can help you quickly solve it. So yeah, um, the correct answer for that was indeed, oh wait, hold on. Actually, the correct answer for question number 6 was actually choice C. I do think that was a good way of thinking about it, but I think part of what ended up um, backfiring was the fact that um, the uh, the value that choice A gives us, it's actually the amount in dollars by which the value of the camera equipment, decreases by, but not the actual value that it is after it's purchased. Choice A gives us how much we're going to take away from 32,400.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but oh no, you're fine. Yes, I think you know again the what you did to solve question 6, it kind of shows that some of these questions, they'll give you answers that are ones that are incomplete in a sense. They'll give you answers that are only just the first part of solving the question. Um, but yes, you did well to figure out, that that's how much the equipment depreciates by. And then the only step that you would have to do past that would be to subtract 10,800 from the 32,400. And so what you would end up getting um, is $21,600, which is letter C. But yeah, still great job on answering that. Moving on to question 10. In the equation above, A, B, C, and D are constants. If the equation has roots -1, -3, and 5, which of the following is a factor of ax to the third plus bx squared plus cx plus d? And would that be A, B, C, or D? And again, I think this is one of those questions where, um, having those, quick um, and reliable, strategies for, these functions can help you. So again, please feel free to share your answer in the chat. I can see some of you have already guessed B for this one. If anyone else has any other guesses, please feel free to put that in the chat as well. Okay, so the correct answer for question 10 is in fact B. Would anybody who answered this correctly like to sort of explain how they went about solving it?
Well, they are giving us the roots of the equation, and we can infer. Well, the roots are the factors in with the opposite sign, So that's what I choose B, because it is equal to, well, um, it's the opposite of one negative.
Yeah, definitely. That's correct, Mauricio. Yes. I think one of those quick things that you'll learn, again, with solving polynomials is that when you're factoring them, the roots are, you know, when you plug them into, you know, any of the, sort of forms that you see in the answer choices, it's going to be, opposite of what it is. As they give them to you. So, for example, since -3 is a root, but it isn't written correctly in the answer choices, we know that x minus 3 isn't a factor. And the same with 5. We know that since x plus 5 is the way that it is written in the answer choices, that's not a factor as well. It should rather be written as x minus 5. With x plus 1, we have -1 as a root, and plugging it into the equation cancels it out. So yes, x plus 1 is a factor of ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. So unfortunately, we've gone a little bit over time. We won't be able to necessarily get to some of the other questions we wanted to talk about for math, but we did want to take a bit of time to kind of go over some of the tips and strategies that we've kind of talked about throughout the sessions to kind of help you with preparing for and also taking the SAT. So as we start off with these, for reading, one of the most important things that you want to do is look at the questions first sometimes. It's probably best not to read the answers, like Jack mentioned during this session, but definitely look at the questions and figure out what you're being asked throughout these sections. Make sure that you mark through the passages that you might think will be important, and answer the questions accordingly to that. And it might take you a bit longer reading questions twice as you answer questions while reading through the passage, but you may not need to reread as much. So depending on how well that works for you, that is also a strategy for tackling it. If you read the passage first, it'll be quicker for you, but you might need to return to the passage a bit more frequently. And also, when you're reading the passage first, consider the correct answer before you're reading the answers. Try and think about what exactly is correct before you read through those choices. And today we did we did read some of the questions first, but we did spend more time reading through the passage first. But definitely try both and see which one works for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't bring in outside conceptions about the topic. If you think you know about the topic already, that's great, but try and kind of shut that out from your question answering. It's evidence-based reading, and the evidence can all be found within the passage. So try and pretend to the degree that you can that you've never heard of the topic before. Do main idea questions last, so you can have more time looking over the passage. And skimming can be an effective strategy if you're running out of time. Yeah, it's better than nothing. That seems obvious, but if you have like 5 minutes and a whole passage left, skim it and answer as many questions as you can. Also, on the regular SAT, as opposed to the SAT 2s, always guess if you don't know. Always guess if you don't know. There's no penalty. You're just leaving points on the table if you don't guess. Tips for writing and language. If all else fails, trust your gut. A lot of these questions, um, will sort of come down to what sounds most right. I mean, that's never actually true because there always is a technically correct answer. But if you cannot find the technical correctness, just do what sounds best, because a lot of this you can do by just a lot of this you will get just by trusting, what seems most right, though you never want to start with that. You know, read every question, and even if you can't decide what's exactly right, just do what you think is most right. Yeah, read to yourself in your head. This is particularly helpful with punctuation questions. Commas can cause people some trouble. It's worth remembering that commas are just like they're designed as places for people to breathe in the middle of reading something. So if it's asking where the comma goes, read it in your head and think where where you would most naturally stop in the sentence. Choose the best option. Sometimes, really, if it asks replace, what would you replace this sentence with? Sometimes it'll all seem, a little blah. Sometimes in the word choice questions, all of the words will seem a little generic, but go with the one that you think is best or least bad. There's no need to read the whole passage closely if you don't get a summary or paragraph order question. I would recommend, making sure that you see all, that you go through the whole thing, but it is not the evidence-based reading passage where having an understanding of the entire passage is important. This is based on specific sentences and specific rules, not the totality of the passage. So, if you feel you can solve the question just with the underlined passage and a quick skimming of the rest, that's fine. Time can be sensitive on these. So yeah, process of elimination as always. And yeah, remember that it's not all about grammar. Sometimes it's about what is the best word, and sometimes it is about what is the most concise. What is what gives the information with the least, clutter. Yeah. Advice for math, translate, which is generally saying, when you have a word problem, it will use certain words, and you want to, in your head, have those words mean mathematical operations. Sometimes it's good to write that out on your scratch paper. Write out the actual problem. If you have a word problem, don't just solve it by the word problem, but write out the mathematical question the word problem is asking. So here's some examples. If it says, oh, what is the difference between these two things? That means subtraction. Twice is 2 times. Take a look at this. But you always want to make sure that you are working with mathematical operations, not just kind of words, because I think that's harder to keep in your head. Plug and solve. Yeah, this is where you just plug in the answers. It works with some things like systems of equations. It's not always the best solution. Sometimes it can take a while, but it's a pretty sure thing. And if you're having trouble with something, it's a good idea. It's also a good way to check something. Like if you do a system of equations and you get what you think is the right answer, plug the one answer that you think is correct back in. would be a good idea. Figures can be helpful. Unless the test indicates otherwise, the figures are to scale. So feel free to look at them and try and see what makes sense. The math that you're going to do is better than what makes sense visually, but if you don't know how something works at all, you know, maybe the visual is a good way to at least get one or two answers out of the way to have a better guess. Yeah, if you don't have a figure, maybe draw one. Therefore, I mean, you can't really use the spatial reasoning then, but you can at least, you know, have the problem, you know, like clearer to you. That helps some people. It's a good way to organize your thinking, especially with word problems. That's some general advice. With word problems, don't go with just the words. Draw a figure or write a math problem or something that, you know, that actually gets at what it's asking you. Smart guessing, this is generally just, you know, the same as process of elimination. If something is completely confusing, use the figures, use some logic. Just try to eliminate any answer you can, because that will, if you, you know, it is significantly better for your score to guess out of 3 than to guess out of 4 answers. Calculator use, don't use the calculator too often. Maybe practice as much as you can without it. Using the calculator too much can take time, which is important. Yeah, you're allowed to use a graphing calculator. I mean, as a very general rule, most teachers will let, you know, if they let you use a calculator on a test, that's the type of calculator you'll use, but don't trust that out of hand. Look it up. They have lists of this. Scientific and graphing calculators, nothing that plugs in, nothing noisy, nothing with a printer, you know, like not an adding machine. Yeah. Try to find patterns. My grandmother used to tutor SAT math, and she always said that there's something like 10 or 15 types of questions. And if you do enough SAT math questions, you'll realize that they're just these like 10 or 15 types of questions, and they're switching the numbers around and making them look a little different. So look for those patterns and try and gauge which ones you aren't as good at so you know what to practice. And I'll hand it over to Manny to talk about SAT preparation resources.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. So one of the first places that you want to look when you're looking for resources to, you know, prepare yourself for the SAT, or at least get started on, you know, understanding how the test works, is going to the official website for it that the College Board has created. You know, since the SAT is created by them and they administer it as well, their website has a lot of information that can help you get ready. More often than not, you'll see that in many places in the website, it'll break down the format and the necessary skills that you'll need to succeed when it comes to the test. And you'll also find, you know, multiple full-length practice tests that can help you master those skills, as well as, you know, a lot of the correct answers and full explanations for each. A lot of the practice material that we've been going through throughout these sessions has come from some of those practice tests. So definitely take time to, you know, head over to that SAT website and look at those practice tests to help you kind of get a grasp on what you'll be seeing on the test. One of the next resources that is super helpful is Khan Academy. And Jack mentioned this earlier on in today's session, and he's absolutely right. You might have heard of it, you know, for its, you know, huge amount of lessons and resources for other subjects in school that you might be working with. But it has a lot of test prep material for the SAT, and it's actually a collaboration with the College Board as well. It offers, you know, various different helpful features and resources for you, like a glossary of terms about the test that will, you know, kind of tell you what certain terms or certain concepts on the test mean, and what that's, it'll give you a better picture of what that entails. And it can also create a custom, practice plan for you based on a diagnostic test or your previous test scores if you've taken the SAT before. And although there are a few downsides, like the limited number of questions and, not necessarily, involving too much strategy, it is a very helpful resource, especially with that diagnostic that it, talks about having a good amount of questions and, having, solid material for you to review with and practice with can really help you. So Khan Academy is a great place to find a lot of resources for studying for the SAT. And, last but not least, another important resource for finding information and material to study for the SAT is Education USA. And kind of like we've already, you know, been doing over these past few weeks with these SAT prep sessions. Education USA also has a blog that's full of resources for SAT prep, and it's got links to a lot of other resources for other assessments like practice for the TOEFL and the IELTS exams. And there's a variety of websites there that are listed that can help you in preparing for the SAT. And also, of course, feel free to look back at our previous sessions to help you practice and sharpen those strategies we've covered. If you head over to the Education USA Mexico City YouTube channel, all of the SAT prep sessions that we've done will be there. And this last one should be uploaded sooner, maybe by the end of this week, if not next. But yes, please feel free to check out everything Education USA has to offer in terms of resources for test prep. But yeah, I believe that is all we wanted to talk about in terms of strategies, tips, and resources. Education USA is hosting a virtual fair, actually, on the 19th of September. And this is where you'll be able to chat with representatives of, 100 institutions, and you can contact Education USA advisors and attend webinars. And you can also find out a lot more about this using the bit.ly link that you can see in that picture there. And also, at Education USA fair.vfairs.com. Now we'll kind of talk about the Instagram Live session that we have. Jack, would you like to say a few words about that or anything? I think you're muted.
I was muted. Yeah, we're going to have an Instagram Live session Wednesday, August 26th, on about job opportunities on campus. Yeah, it's at noon. It's through the Education USA MX Instagram page. It's pretty. It's a nice opportunity. It's free flowing. You're allowed to ask questions and get live answers. Hear about Manny's and my experiences and with regard to this, as well as the experiences of the other Education USA intern from Chicago. She's working in Guadalajara. Yeah, no, it's been a really good experience so far. I think we've gotten a lot of important information across, and really, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask about, this in particular, but I think the college process in general, feel free to show up and post some questions in the chat section of that, and we'll answer them live. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, Manny, you're leading it, I think so, or
Okay.
you're making the PowerPoint at least.
Yeah. And then last but not least, we are having a webinar this, I believe, Thursday, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So we're having a webinar this Thursday about students' perspective on living the college experience, and in this webinar, myself and Jack will be talking about what it's been like, you know, at least for the short time on my part, living on campus at U Chicago, and kind of how the college experience has affected us, and kind of our personal I guess perspective on it. And one of our fellow interns who's actually at the Guadalajara Advising Center, she'll also be joining us and talking about her experience at U Chicago as well, and kind of just the common things that you might be able to relate to with other college students. Um, Even in kind of times like these where everybody's working from home, there's still certain things of the college experience that you'll be able to see and witness for yourself. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for that webinar this Thursday at 5 p.m. CDT. But other than that, I believe that's everything that we kind of wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's our contact info. We have, as you can see, like a dozen, internet ways to get in touch with us. So, if it's not clear from this, please, we would love to help. If you have any, questions, if you're curious about what we do, please take a look. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Sorry it went so over today. Last session, we wanted to get in as much as possible. But thank you all so much, and have a pleasant rest of your Monday.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Many
thank you all for coming, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
No problem. Glad to.